In today's Leeds news, Chelsea and Leeds team news for Wembley, Leeds interest in Joao Gomez, Perri ready for the semi-final, and rumour mill in reverse with dismissing rumours on Hamer and Elliot. Hey folks, welcome to the Leeds View for your daily Leeds United news. Friday the 24th of April with your news, Jer here. A lot of stuff to get stuck into this weekend. We've got the FA Cup semi-final with the podcast last night, which looked back at the Bournemouth game, as well as ahead to this weekend's action. Also, if you are floating around Dublin this weekend, the Camden in Dublin are having a watch party, and anyone that's been there for big games for Leeds United will know how good of an atmosphere it can be. So if you want to get down to the Camden this Sunday, they are having a watch party, and you can check that out if you want it. Now, across the board today, it is pretty quiet coming into the weekend, but there are a couple of clarification stories as well as one interest in a player that we do need to cover off. But we'll start off with team news for the Chelsea and Leeds United tie on Sunday. Right, we're all set for Sunday now. We got the league game out of our way. We're on 40 points, and we got a chance to soak up some semi-final action, but we've got some team news from both camps ahead of the game. From a Leeds perspective, bad news on Ilya Groove, whose season is over after picking up a meniscus injury in training, so he is done for this season. Good news, though, on Jayden Bogle. Daniel Farke confirmed it was an impact injury that he picked up against Bournemouth. Stood on twice in the first 10 minutes of that game, which definitely had a bit of an impact on him. But Daniel Farke has said he is expecting him to be fit and available for the game this Sunday. Be interesting to see, do Leeds leave Joe Rodon in that centre-back three and put James Justin in for a more defensive-minded fullback, or do they go with Jayden Bogle, who's been good against Chelsea already this year? From a Chelsea perspective, they will be without long-standing injuries, Jamie Gittins as well as Levi Colwill, and they're also going to be without Estevao, who missed the game against Brighton at the weekend. So no Gabby Goodmunson versus Estevao showcase again this time around. There are doubts over Cole Palmer, although Chelsea reckon he will be in and around the squad. He's only labelled as a doubt, and he could be back and involved in some capacity in the semi-final. There are major doubts, though, about striker João Pedro, who missed the game against Brighton and is labelled as being touch and go for the game against Leeds United. From a refereeing perspective, the man in the middle will be a familiar face in Jared Gillett, who will take charge. He's had Leeds 4 times this season. Leeds had a bit of an issue with him earlier in the year. Daniel Farke heavily criticised him, which is not something Farke tends to do, when he gave a free kick against Leeds United at the City Ground, in which they eventually scored from. Free kick should have gone the other way. They gave it against Anton Stach, so he wasn't happy with him then. But Jared Gillett will be the man in the middle. So we'll see how we go. Check out, as I say, the Camden on Sunday. I'll confirm with you whether doing a watch along or I'll be at the Camden myself. I haven't decided just yet. Need to sort out a few bits and pieces. But we'll move on for now and get into a transfer story around Joao Gomez. So we heard earlier on this week that Leeds may have inquired about a couple of Wolverhampton Wanderers players. We know there's almost a daily link now to Ladislav Krejci and constant updates on what's going on that one. But Leeds were also said to have inquired about 18-year-old winger Matthias Mane, who had a fantastic game against Leeds United when he came on. Looks a real handful at 18 years of age. They also apparently inquired about Andre as well as Joao Gomez. Now, this morning there is an update from Sebastian Vidal, and he says the Leeds United are said to be ready to move for the Brazilian central midfielder Joao Gomez. Now, Vidal claims that Leeds have had direct talks with Wolves around the player and are ready and have shown their intent to make a move for him once the window opens, or at least once their league status is 100% confirmed and they can actually go and put an offer in. Now, there will always likely be the same people who will say, well, why are we buying players, or why are we looking at players from a side that have been relegated? The players are not always, the individuals are not always responsible necessarily for a relegation. That there is the collective collapse, which is more a bigger part of that. And if you look at the Leeds squad, this is where we should probably line things up. Jayden Bogle was part of a relegation. James Justin was part of a relegation. Chris Somerville was part of Leeds relegation. And Ethan Ampadu's got a couple of relegations under his belt as well. So it's not always the individual players that are responsible, and they can move on to other clubs and have very successful careers. But from the Gomez perspective at Leeds, there's some confusion around the potential price tag. Some reports, and Vidal are saying Wolves want £50 million for him, which nobody in their right mind is going to pay a club who are looking at relegation. There are other reports that say a more realistic price tag that will likely go is somewhere in the region between 26 and 29 million pounds. The 50 million pounds could also be a release clause that is in Gomez's contract, which, seeing as Wolves have gone down, no one is likely to pay that. They need to clear the deck and rebalance the books as they move into the championship. So there is a more realistic price tag of anything between 26 and 29 million pounds. Now, Team Talk have got involved in this as well, and they claim that Crystal Palace have got real interest in Joao Gomez as well. And there are teams outside of the UK in Europe that are also keeping an eye on Gomez's situation. Now, from a personal standpoint, I personally think Joao Gomez is a very, very good midfielder. I think he's a tidy player. I thought he was decent against Leeds as well, and a very poor Wolverhampton Wanderers side, it should be said. He's been a long-standing player in the Premier League. He's got 4 seasons under his belt in the Premier League, and he's only 25 years of age, so he's got his peak years still ahead of him at this level. Now, he's also got 10 caps for Brazil, so you're no slouch if you're picking up caps for Brazil at any level, but at a first-team level to have 10 caps for the Brazilian national side shows you have something to offer at the very least. Now, Leeds, as I say, won't be paying £50 million for probably any player this summer, let alone a player part of a side that has gone down, because we know that second you go down, valuations drop massively. The transfer market value is €32 million. That's around 28, 29 million pounds. That lines up with some of the other reports that are saying anything between 26 and 29, likely depending on interest as well, of which there is said to be plenty of interest in Joao Gomez. But yeah, a very good central midfielder, good all-rounder as well. I think he'd be a very good midfielder for Leeds to get. We have to see what they do. Let's move on to Lucas Perri. Perry's expected to start in goal for Leeds on Sunday in the semi-final, and he's been talking up Leeds United's chances of not just beating Chelsea in the semi-final, but going on and winning the entire competition. He doesn't see any reason why Leeds can't do that. Now, he is at odds to Daniel Farke's opinion on this as well. Farke does not necessarily believe that that is the case, but Perry is definitely looking forward to the game at the weekend. He's been speaking to the Mirror, and he is looking forward to playing at Wembley as a man who has grown up, as he says, watching English football and the FA Cup as a kid in Brazil. He knows exactly what this is about, and he is hoping and looking forward to not just playing against Chelsea at Wembley, but also going into a final and potentially winning the whole thing. Now, Daniel Farke has a far more pragmatic and balanced approach on this, and he doesn't think it's realistic at this point to be talking that far ahead. Daniel Farke, as we all know, takes it day by day and game by game, which is probably the more realistic approach at this situation. But Perry is going far more down the dreaming route at this point and doesn't see any reason why Leeds can't win it. Speaking to the Mirror, he said the following: "I'm happy to help the team with the opportunities that I've got, and we're looking forward to the semi-final. Of course, it'll be like playing at the Maracanã. So yeah, it's going to be an incredible experience. I remember watching the FA Cup and the Premier League and the whole of English football, and I know the importance of this competition. It will be incredible for the club, and we're looking forward to it. We're going to have a difficult match, but we can do it. Everything is possible in football, so we have to believe, and the journey in the Cup has been incredible." He's been very good for Leeds in the FA Cup. A couple of slightly erratic moments that he got away with, more so against West Ham United than anybody else, but he has had big moments for Leeds in the FA Cup this year. It's a big opportunity for him as well to show what he can do and why Leeds brought him in the first place on the big stage, playing in Wembley. Players should look forward to these kind of moments. So, assuming all goes well, he could then do a lot of favours for himself with the Leeds fans around what his position could look like at the club going into next season. So, yeah, interesting one, but a big game for him this weekend, as well as everybody else. Let's move into some rumour mill territory, but we're flipping it. We're going to start dismissing some rumours that are floating around over the last couple of days. There's 2 on this one. We'll start with the obvious one that we're all looking forward to getting off the books, and that's Gustavo Hamer. And so, according to reports, Leeds United did, in fact, have a little bit of a sniff and had a look to see what the availability of Gustavo Hamer was like. Sheffield United manager Chris Wilder has all but confirmed that Hamer will likely leave the club this summer as they need to bring in some funds. But according to the reports today, Leeds did have a look, did inquire, but won't be following it on with any further moves. Leeds are said to have other priorities and believe that there are several clubs interested in Gustavo Hamer, which will likely cause his price tag to go up, and Leeds don't believe the money that will likely be paid for him is what they should be paying for him. Now, Everton are said to have already held talks with Sheffield United around a possible move for Hamer, and Coventry are the obvious link of a side to him as they come back into the Premier League and his history with Coventry City as well. So from Leeds' perspective, Leeds will not be getting involved, apparently, in any bidding war for Gustavo Hamer this summer, and will be looking elsewhere. Now, another player that has popped up, and this is more clarification on a link necessary than outright dismissing it, but it was Harvey Elliot, and this popped up yesterday, and it's not necessarily Leeds pursuing the player as a rumour. The links have been, I suppose, clickbaity to a degree, on some of them saying Leeds' interest in Harvey Elliot, but it's not necessarily the case. He's had a pretty awful year at Aston Villa, not from a personal playing perspective, but from the situation he's found himself in. The deal with Aston Villa basically said at 10 league appearances, they have an obligation to buy him at £35 million. Unai Emery did not want to do that. Doesn't seem as a player with a long-term future at the club, so they stopped playing him in the league. Now, he has played European games for Aston Villa as well. He's an England national as well. So there's a decent player in there, but not a player Aston Villa wanted to take forward. So the link from a Leeds perspective seems pretty straightforward. Elliot's agent is said to have approached several clubs in the Premier League about the possibility of purchasing Harvey Elliot this coming summer. He's said to have approached Leeds, Brighton, Brentford and Newcastle, and they're the ones that at least have been made public at this point. Now, the reports say that Leeds, again, have priorities elsewhere, and Elliot is not a player that Leeds United will be looking at pursuing this summer. There's a couple of factors to this. One of them is labelled as his likely price tag. We also know there's a tax when you're buying a player from Liverpool. They like to ramp up the prices. Ryan Brewster's always the one that springs to mind on that one. But also his lack of game time this year as well in the Premier League. So, Leeds were looking at different types of players who can make an impact. But, I mean, Harvey Elliott this time last year, if you were linked to him coming to Leeds, you would have said, yeah, good player. Why not get him in? He wants to go back to Liverpool and fight first place there. I think that'll be a struggle for him. But it'd be interesting to see what does happen with him. But according to the reports and all the links that are out there, Leeds United are not interested in a move for Gustavo Hamer or Harvey Elliott at this point. So there we go. We got rid of some names off the list, and we'll see what happens with the rest of them. Again, I will update you on the watch along situation for Sunday. There might be a news out tomorrow because there's no game on the Saturday. We'll see what's floating around. Outside that, enjoy the rest of your day. Check out the podcast from last night, and feel free to download Finalysis app for free using the QR code or the link down below in the description. I will talk to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you later. Bye.